My sister texted me while I was about to sign the papers that would leave everything I own to kids like the one I used to be. Please don't block me. Dad is dying. We need 10 minutes. I stared at the screen until my attorney asked if he should step out. I said yes, because I was 9 years old when my parents left me at an orphanage. And when somebody tells you there's one truth you were never told, it does something ugly to your chest. One duffel bag, my name written on masking tape. My mother fixing the collar on my jacket like that was the important part. My father signing forms without looking at me long enough to make it harder on himself. My brother had already gone with my mother. My sister had already gone with my father. I was the extra piece, the child nobody had figured out where to put. I remember the plastic chair by the window, the smell of floor polish, the door shutting behind them. I remember running to the glass because some part of me still believed one of them would stop it. Neither did. Their car sat there for 1 second longer than it needed to. Then it pulled out of the lot. I'm 47 now. I own the building where I was standing that afternoon. I run property operations in 3 states. People call me self-made, like that's supposed to sound clean. It isn't. I built a life that way because I learned early that needing people is dangerous. The article that brought them back had my name in it. The business, the nonprofit, the housing program I fund for young adults aging out of care. It also mentioned the orphanage. Mentioned both parents left me there and never came back. 4 days later, the calls started. Then the text. Please don't block me. Dad is dying. We need 10 minutes. Then one more. He said there's something you were never told. That was the only reason I didn't block the number. Not because I trusted them, I didn't. But if you've spent almost 40 years building your life around one permanent fact, and someone tells you that fact might be wrong, it's hard to look away. So I moved the meeting to 7 o'clock. My building, my conference room, my table. After staff left. If they wanted 10 minutes, they were getting them on my ground. The years between 9 and 18 don't need every detail. The short version is a child learning, in stages, how disposable he is. 3 placements in 6 years. One house that smiled when the caseworker came through the door and went cold the minute she left. One home that fed me, clothed me, and treated me with the same warmth people reserve for a folding chair. One family that never said I wasn't one of theirs, but made sure I felt it anyway. You can hear those things without words. In who gets patience, in who gets defended, in who gets stored. I learned fast. Don't ask for too much. Don't get used to kindness. Don't mistake softness for safety. School was the only place that stayed the same. Numbers made sense. Numbers didn't change their mind about you. A teacher named Mr. Castillo noticed that and pushed me toward accounting. I aged out with 1 bag, 1 state folder, and the kind of silence that follows you into every room. 2 jobs, then 3. Bookkeeping at night, apartment work during the day, side work on weekends. By my 30s, I was managing finances for a real estate group and building my own company in the hours nobody sees. People called it a comeback story. It never felt like a comeback. It felt like survival with nicer clothes. Every reserve account, every paid-off building, every contract I checked twice. A boy standing at a window, learning what it meant when nobody came back. At 6:58 that evening, I was already in the conference room with my sleeves rolled up and a legal pad in front of me, even though I had no intention of writing anything down. I heard the elevator open, slow wheels, uneven footsteps. Then a pause outside the glass door. My sister stepped in first. I recognized her immediately and hated that I did. Behind her came my mother, smaller than I remembered, and my father in a wheelchair. Nobody had mentioned the wheelchair. That hit harder than I wanted it to. Then my sister said, "Thank you for not leaving." Not hello, not how are you, just thank you for not leaving. I almost laughed. I offered water out of habit. My mother's hand shook so badly she couldn't get the cap off the bottle. My sister opened it for her. None of them sat until I did. Then my father said, "I know what this looks like." I said, "Good." He nodded once. Then he said, "We didn't come to ask for money." That got my attention, because if it wasn't money, then whatever came next was worse. He looked at the envelope in my mother's lap. Thick, old, soft at the edges from being handled too much. Then he said, "I'm dying. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm here because there's one thing you built your whole life on that isn't true." Everything in me locked up. I said, "You've got about 8 minutes left." My mother flinched. My father didn't. He said, "The first time we came back for you was 11 weeks after we left you there." Nothing moved in my face, but my body heard it. He found work. My mother stabilized. They got an apartment. Not a good one, not a permanent one, but enough, they thought, to come back and undo what they had done. Instead, they were told I had already been transferred. Case reassigned due to parental non-engagement. He repeated the phrase exactly. I said, "You expect me to believe that?" "No," he said. "I expect you to read." He slid the documents across the table. Court notices, denial letters, state letterhead, dates, case numbers. The kind of paper I'd spent my adult life reading. My eyes found the dates before I meant them to. The abandonment classification had been entered 6 days after they left me. 6. Not 11 weeks, not even 11 days. 6 days. Before they had missed a single follow-up. Before they had time to come back. Before a system that big should have been deciding anything final about anybody. I looked up at my mother. She wasn't crying. That was worse. She looked like someone who had cried about this for so many years it had changed her face. My father kept talking. The intake caseworker on my file had been investigated years later. Records falsified. Abandonment findings fabricated. Children pushed into long-term placements through paperwork made to look routine from a distance. My case was one of several eventually corrected on paper. Corrected. That word landed in the middle of the table and did nothing. Because corrected is not the word for 38 years. My sister said, "Mom wrote to you every year." My mother pushed the envelope toward me with both hands. I didn't want to touch it. I touched it anyway. There had to be 3 dozen letters in there. Every envelope dated within a day or two of my birthday. I pulled one from the middle. 10th birthday. It started with, "We went back. They said you were gone. I don't know where to send this, so I'm keeping it until I can hand it to you myself." That was as far as I got. For 1 second, the room disappeared. I was back in that plastic chair by the window, counting headlights. Back in the version of the world where abandonment was the only explanation that made sense. Back in the long years after, building my life around one permanent fact. Nobody came. Except maybe that wasn't true. Maybe somebody did come. Maybe they just hit a locked door built by people who knew how to make disappearance look official. I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward. My father gripped the arms of his wheelchair and said nothing. I walked to the glass and looked out over the city. 47 years old. My name on the directory downstairs. Half the block carrying deals I signed, and all I could see was that parking lot from when I was 9. I felt angry. Not clean anger, not useful anger. The kind that makes you realize half your life was built in response to a lie. Every wall, every habit, every time I kept one hand near the exit in case love turned practical and left. I turned back around. Then my father said the one thing that finally cracked something loose. "We still left you there, son. That part is ours. But we came back. We did come back." That word hit harder than the documents. Son. Not because it fixed anything, because it arrived 38 years too late and still landed. I walked over to him and asked the only question that mattered. Why now? My sister answered before he could. Because the investigation records resurfaced when they were clearing storage after his diagnosis. Because my mother still had every letter. Because he said he wasn't dying, with me still believing nobody tried. That nearly broke me more than the documents did. Because she was right. I built housing for kids aging out of care because I knew exactly what it meant to believe nobody had ever chosen you. I built half my life around protecting a boy I thought had never been worth coming back for. The anger didn't disappear. Some damage stays. Some years do what they do and remain there no matter how much truth shows up afterward. But the target moved, not off them completely, off them alone. I sat back down, not because anything was healed, not because we were suddenly a family. I sat down because I wanted the rest of the truth. The names, the denials, the exact point they were told I was out of reach. We were in that room for almost 2 hours. By the end of it, I knew more than I ever wanted to know. I knew my father had scraped together money for hearings while working nights. I knew my mother kept writing because stopping felt too close to agreeing with what had been done. I knew none of that erased the day they left me in that building. And I knew the worst thing they ever did to me had been real. It just hadn't stayed simple. When my father rolled toward the elevator, nothing was resolved. I didn't tell them I forgave them. I didn't promise holidays. I didn't offer money, comfort, or one neat reunion scene to make anybody feel better before he died. What I did do was keep the letters. All of them. My mother noticed when I put the envelope into my briefcase. She closed her eyes for 1 second, like that was more mercy than she expected. My sister stopped at the door and asked if she could call me next week. Not tomorrow, not soon, next week. For the first time all night, that sounded honest. I told her, 1 call, no surprises. A few minutes later, my attorney came back, set the estate papers in front of me, and waited. I looked down at the page that would send everything I built to young adults aging out of care. I signed it. I didn't change a line. Because whatever truth arrived that night, I still know what the system did. I still know what that boy became inside it. I still know there are kids sitting by windows right now, believing silence means they weren't worth coming back for. If I can interrupt that story for even a few of them, then I will. But after I signed, I sat there with that envelope under my hand and finally admitted something I had never let myself say out loud. I spent my whole life believing nobody came back for me. Turns out they did. They just never made it through the door.
I don't know. Something about that just stays with you. Curious what you think. See you in the next. Thank you.